Hello and welcome to another FoxVox video tutorial. This one's going to cover the Virtual Crew Chief library in FoxVox and the design methodology and intent and how I built the library and how it functions. To start off, I'm using the basic FoxVox library for BMS, and I've removed and stripped down a lot of the commands on it, so it's a little bit of a simpler version. And I've also removed all of the configurations for both the key and voice configurations. We don't have any keys set up or configurations. And on the voice, again, it's kind of a simpler, more streamlined version. So we're kind of starting from the basic library, and we're going to add the virtual crew chief in. To start, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of configurations. The default configuration is going to be speaking with our virtual crew chief, and we're going to do this is going to be before engine start. After we get initiated, we're going to do another one, so we're going to call that a post start, and then finally when we conclude, we're going to move into our flight configuration. So these are the three configurations I'm setting up. In the flight configuration, everything's going to be on, at least that way, but let's move over to the default. We're going to turn off, leave the ground on so we can do some ground communications. But we're going to turn off most of our communications with other flight members, and we'll leave some of the in-game commands on. And on the post start, we're going to disable those as well. Okay, now key commands, we're going to create the same configurations. Okay, so moving back to our default. First thing I'm going to do is create a new voice command group for our virtual crew chief. And when we address our chief, that's going to get us on. And let's go ahead and create one more here. And this one's going to be for when we don't get onto the crew chief and we have an unrecognized voice command. So this is going to be kind of a catch-all. And I'm going to go ahead and move these up to the top, since they're the first in our order of operations here. So with those in place, the first thing I want to do is put in when the crew chief doesn't understand us or doesn't recognize the command, he's going to query back and let us know that he didn't hear it. So the very first command we're going to put in here is going to be a say again. And I'm not going to define any voice keys on this one. And so that way it's going to serve as the default for the chief. So if I say chief something 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 and he doesn't understand me, it's not going to make it onto any of the other commands. It'll latch onto this one and it'll let me know that he didn't understand. So let's go ahead and add an output. And we're going to go into the chief say again, and we've got two options. One is no start and then running. Under the no start, it doesn't have the engine running with the background noise, and of course running it does. So let's start with the no start, and we're going to select all of those. That's going to put all of these as optional outputs, and it will randomly pick one of these four commands whenever this command executes. And if I put my cursor over that, you can see it gives me a little indication there. Times 4 tells me I've got 4 sounds bound to that command. So it's going to choose between one of those four as a response. And this is say again, engine off. And we're going to go ahead and add another command, this time with the engine on. Okay, now the problem with this is, of course, when you run this command, both of these are going to execute and simultaneously, which is not what we want. So we're going to go ahead and define a variable on these and set up a condition. Now, before I go any further, the conditions of the variables are going to actually be coming from the BMS game. And to do that, we're going to use a plugin to pull the variables from within the game. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my plugins and add a new plugin here. And we're going to move up in the library. This is included in the crew chief library. Under the assemblies folder, you'll see a DLL file for an F4 shared mem. And that's going to access the shared memory area of Falcon BMS when it's running and pull in all of those variables. And the drop-down list is going to expose all the methods available for running, and the one we want is the get current data. The optional prefix, this allows you, if you've got multiple plugins or if you've got the same plugin running on a DLL and you've got a conflict in variable names. Let's just say one plugin has a variable named X and another one has another named X. You can put a prefix, and that prefix will go in front of all of the variables for this assembly. So I could give it a prefix of F4 shared mem, and then it would prefix all my variables with that, so it would differentiate them. In this case, I'm only using one plugin. There's not going to be any conflict, so I'm not going to put in a prefix. The other setting we have here is the pull frequency. It's the interval in which this plugin is going to be running and executing. In this case, 1,000 milliseconds, or every second, it's going to be executing this method and updating all of the variables that it finds. So let's go ahead and click on the view variables. That's going to load, and what it'll do is actually run the executable, and it'll run it one time since it's disabled, but it will run it to load all the variables that it finds. So we then have access to all the BMS live variables here. And for our condition, the one that we're currently looking for the engine on is actually going to be tied to RPM. There's an RPM variable which indicates the RPM status of the engine. We're going to use that to bind as to whether the engine is on or off. Okay, and the other thing we want to do with our plugin is we want to make sure that sorry, I get something moved out of the way here. One of the things we want to do is, well, actually I'm going to add a condition on this operation. I'm kind of jumping forward a little bit, but what I want is to shut off the shared memory updates once we get to the end of the crew chief, but let's get to that a little bit later. So in the meantime, I found the variable, which is the RPM. So let's put a condition on this one. Again, our variable was RPM. And once I set up this variable, I can highlight over the three dots and I can see its current value is null. And that's because BMS isn't running, so it's not loading anything, and we have a null value. But we want this one to run when the RPMs are 0. And in FoxVox, if a variable is set to a numeric value, null will be interpreted as 0. So in this case, you can see it's green. That means that it's currently equal to 0 and would run. So, okay, this condition set being applied, this one will run when the engine is off. And let's go ahead and apply the same condition, RPM. And this one when the engine is on, so it has to be greater than 0, which is not true currently. Okay, so with our chief, whenever we say a command and he doesn't recognize us, he's going to ask us to repeat ourselves or let us know that he didn't hear it. But this is only if we get onto the chief command group. And if we didn't make it onto the chief command group, if we said something that the speech didn't know, we wouldn't make it here and this would never be executed, which is what this group is. This is the chief unrecognized. And with no recognition keys defined, this one is going to become a catch-all. So what I want to do is take our say again command. Let's copy this one, by dragging it over onto the chief unrecognized, and now we've got the say again command over here on the unrecognized. So now if he doesn't recognize us on this one, or if it makes it to an unrecognized command group, he's going to ask us to repeat ourselves. Let's give that a try. Chief, do you understand this?
Sorry, sir. Say again.
Okay, so he didn't, and we're getting a response from our chief, so that's good. Okay, so the next thing we want to put in, let's go ahead and do a greeting for chief. And let's kind of think of some of the things we could say. We could say, how are you? How's it going? What's happening? How are you doing? Several different possibilities. So let's go ahead and throw in a couple. So how, how's, what's. How are you doing? How are you? How's it going? Okay, we could also say maybe what's happening. Anyway, these are up to you. Whatever keys you think you want to be able to say to chief to get a question off to him on how he is. And let's go ahead and set up his output and response. So under sounds, we have two folders. House chief with no start, so engine off. Let's go ahead and add those. And we see here we got 12 of those options. And let's add our condition for RPM at 0. And we'll call this house chief engine off. And do the same thing with the engine running. Confirm those are on. Okay, so now we have our chief, and we can ask him how he's doing. Let's see. Chief, how's it going?
Well, sir, Scooter overg'd 175 again, so it's going to be a long day.
And that dang scooter. Okay. Well, Chief's doing okay otherwise, so we've got that working. Okay, so for our next command, let's go ahead and get into our operations that we've got to do. The very first thing we're going to do is a comms check. And if you want to know where we're getting this from, there is a resource that is provided in the library as well. And this has been updated to include commands for the virtual crew chief. It's very helpful. So hold on, give me a second, bring that up. So in the library, you're going to see a Word doc. And in this Word document, I've highlighted actually the comms interactivity with the crew chief. So you can see where that's at. And it's kind of a nice thing when you're setting up the FoxVox library for voice. You don't have to go through all the individual switches and testing. We're going to do that for the sake of this video, just going through it kind of in a test mode. And I'll show you how that's implemented as well. And we'll go part by part here. So, but this is a great guide and very helpful in getting things going. Okay, so for our comms check, voice key I'm going to do here is just comms check. And when we say this, our chief is going to respond with our first command, loud and clear. Okay, so let's go ahead and give that a test. Chief, comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. How me?
Loud and clear.
I apologize, sir. Say last.
Okay, so every time we respond back to our chief with loud and clear or Lima 5, Lima Charlie, I'm sorry, 5x5, Lima Charlie, he's going to come back and say, what was that? I didn't get it. So we're going to go ahead and add another command that just captures our response to chief so that he's not confused. So we're going to do loud and clear. Another option was 5x5. Now, if I say a single 5, it's going to qualify for both of those. You didn't have to have 2, but 2 have to be satisfied, so I just put it on both for clarity. But a response of Lima Charlie as well. Okay, and I'm not going to do an output command. Again, that's just simply for our chief so that we don't get a response of, you know, what was that when we respond back to him. Okay, and for that output, I'm going to go ahead and retitle that so I remember what that one was. Okay, so let's test that. Chief, comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. How me?
Loud and clear.
I apologize, sir. Say again.
Lima Charlie.
Sorry, sir. Say again.
Loud and clear.
Sorry, sir. Say again.
Okay, so having a little trouble here, but never fear. The reason why is because we aren't saying chief loud and clear. And we don't want to say chief all the time, so what we're going to do is we're going to be pretty liberal about adding voice recognition keys to get us into here. So if I say the word comms for a comms check, I don't have to say chief comms check, I can just say comms. And I want to say loud or clear. That's going to get us over onto the chief as well. And I don't think I want to do the loud, but I do want to do the clear. Let's go ahead and do a star wildcard so I can say that in any order. Okay, let's try that again. Comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. How me?
Loud and clear. Okay, so you can see loud and clear executed. Chief's good.
Sorry, sir. Say again.
But he didn't get that. Okay. So you can kind of see the design starting up. Like I said, you're going to see me be pretty liberal in getting commands to get us onto our chief. And again, we've got our unrecognized command here. So if the loud and clear doesn't get onto there as well, we could always say, you know what, I want to move that over onto the unrecognized section as well. Just in case the loud and clear, if I kind of cut off the word clear, that'll get me onto here as well, and I'll be good. So if I say chief loud and clear or just loud and clear, between the two I should be captured pretty good. So okay, so one other thing I want to do as well is I want to kind of track my progress as I go through. So whenever I do the comms check here, I'm going to go create a variable. And this variable is going to be called completed. And I'm going to give it a plus value to increment it. So whenever I do a comms check, that's going to complete and say that that's done and give me one step in completion. Our next step is to get the engine started now that we've got the comms check and everything ready. So I'm going to go ahead and move the loud and clear in front of the comms check just for priority on catching the phrase. And let's go ahead and add a new command. This is going to be ready. Start 2. So the keywords I'm going to use for this are start and 2. So if I say chief ready for start 2 or clear for start 2, as long as I say start 2, we should be good to go on that. And let's come back over to here. And let's get a start here so we can get onto that command as well. And we want to make sure with this that we've got a condition set. We only want to do this one if the RPM is equal to 0. So once our engine starts, we don't want to be able to do ready start 2 anymore. That will be complete. Okay, so when we clear for that, Chief's going to respond to us, clear for start 2. And at this point, once the engine starts, some things have got to happen. Chief is going to give us a green light letting us know that the start was good. That's going to happen through BMS. We're going to start the engine, RPMs are going to ramp up, and then our Chief's going to respond. But we're not going to use a vocal command since he's waiting on the engines, not us. So to do that, we're going to have to jump over to the key configuration. Voice command, the only way to initiate a voice command to initiate outputs is through a spoken key phrase. And of course, the condition set has to be met, but a condition set won't trigger an output on the voice commands. But it will on the key commands. So time to move over there. Let's go ahead and create a new key command group. And we're going to call that Chief Interactions. And let's create a new key command for good start. Okay, and let's specify what's going to trip this. It's not going to be a button press or anything that we do since it's coming from BMS, but it is going to be based on the condition that the RPM is greater than or equal to 60. Okay, and we also, later on, we're going to be ramping the engine up and down, and it's possible that the RPMs are going to be changing or going below or above. We don't want it to go once it's fired. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to set it to go off of our completed, and we set our completed to a plus with the comms check, but I think I'm going to change that. We're going to have completed be 0 at this step with the engine. Let's jump back over here on our comms check. And we're not going to set completed there. And we don't want to set it here. We're going to leave it and let the completed stay at 0 until the start 2. This is kind of a critical key phase because we're going to move into a post-start phase here. So to do that, we're going to jump on to the command and we're going to change to a post-start. Okay, and one other thing we're going to do here as well, we don't always want to jump into BMS in order to kind of test this out. So we're going to do set up a test variable that's going to ramp our engine up to RPMs of 65 as well. So let's figure out how to do this. Let's go ahead and create a test RPM to 65. And we're going to have a delay inserted on that. We don't want it to ramp up immediately. Let's give it about 4 seconds. We're not going to wait too long for it to happen. And when it does, we're going to have it set our RPM value. And let's go ahead and go to 65. That's over 60. That'll trip it. And we don't want the variables to be set until after our delay. So let's go ahead and switch that over. Okay. But we need to make sure that this test variable only executes when we're in a test. And we know we're in a test when we're not running BMS. If we're running BMS, then it's not going to be a test. So what we want to do is let's come over at the variables that BMS is sharing with us. And one of the things that I saw was there's a BMS version that comes through in the shared memory and tells us what version of BMS we're running. If BMS is not running, it's going to be null. Otherwise, it's a value that's going to be always greater than 0. So that's a good one for us to use as a determining factor as to whether BMS is running or not, or if we're conducting a test. So let's go ahead and copy that. Let's go to our conditions. And let's just say our BMS major version, and we don't want to set a value, so it should run whenever it's null. That way, if we're running BMS, this won't execute, and we're going to be waiting on the BMS to tell us that our engine is started. Otherwise, our test will do it for us. Okay. Now, that being said, on our plugin, one of the things we want to make sure is that our plugin doesn't override the variable when it's updating. So if we have the plugin turned on and it's polling, when we set our engine to 65, 1 second, within 1 second, it's going to reduce it back to null, and we're probably going to get some weird responses. So one of the things we want to do on our condition here is let's set it we want it to run when the BMS version major is not equal to null. But if we do that, that's going to cause another kind of a conflict here. What if BMS just hasn't loaded yet? It's not going to be able to load because that's going to prevent it. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to initiate a test. We're going to create a test variable, and we're going to say when test value is not equal to on. And since I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and add another variable. And what we want to do is, actually, you know what? We're going to track with a step. So let's get rid of complete. Let's do it with a step. And we're going to say when the step is complete, or let's keep that short actually. Let's just say done. Okay, and so what's going to happen is we're going to take this step and we're going to track as we're going through our different phases. We can set what phase we're on, and when we're finished with the crew chief and he's waved off, we're going to set our step to done. So our step is going to be our current step, and then when the step is done, this will disengage and we won't be polling memory anymore. And so that way, when we're doing the rest of our flight, FoxVox isn't using memory to update the variables every second when we don't need them. So that'll shut this off when we're complete. So the thing we need to remember now is when we're finished to set our step to done. So let's go ahead and save that. And just FYI, on the beta library that was initially pushed, I did not put this test variable on. And so you can either put it on yourself, or I am going to post a copy of this updated library as well, back up with an updated version of the beta that has that, because it can give you unexpected behaviors when the plugin is on, which is what it should be by default. So, and then in fact, we're going to do that. Let's go ahead and turn our plugin on so that it's running by normal. And what we're going to do here is when this executes, our RPMs are going to go to 65, but we're also going to turn our test on so that variables, once this is started, and we want to do that the first one. So let's go ahead and set that first before we set our RPMs. That'll disengage our plugin. And now we can get into a test. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, let's go ahead and give it a quick check here and see if what we've got set up so far works. Remember to turn on our key recognition and our voice recognition.
I apologize, sir. Say again.
Chief comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. Help me.
Loud and clear. Ready, start 2.
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Okay, so we've initiated our start. Our test variable kicked in since BMS isn't running, and our RPMs turned up, and they worked. So, and you notice it did reset when you shut off your key recognition and voice recognition. You'll reset values. Speaking of reset, though, one thing we do want to do is be able to reset our testing without having to restart, so that we can go back. So let me go over here really quick. We do happen to have a reset command. So I'm going to show you how we do this. This is going to be a reset game. So reset gets us onto the key, so we're going to say game. Now we're going to switch to our default config. And we're going to reset our variables by coming over here to the variables and clicking this reset all variables. That's going to reset everything to initial state. Okay, so whenever we call this reset game command, that's going to reset. And we want to have a copy of this on our game as well, so I can say game reset or reset game. So let's go ahead and put a copy of this over there as well. And let's take a look here. So we did switch over onto our post-start configuration. And on our post-start configuration, we no longer want to do a comms check. And we don't need the loud and clear, so we're going to go ahead and disable those as well. And let's test our reset. Reset game. Okay, so now we've got a reset. And you could, if you wanted to configure it, if you wanted Ready Start 2 to only be available once you've done the comms check, you could go ahead and do that. Sometimes I like to leave it flexible. Kind of like real life, if you miss it or forget it, you can still move on. And I like to be able to make mistakes. I don't want my software to correct everything, so I kind of leave it flexible, but again, that's up to you. Okay, and once we do our start, the next thing we're going to do is the EPU Safety Pin. We're going to turn off the EPU and have the chief pull the EPU Safety Pin. And we only want to execute this. We had our completed step. This is going to kind of keep this earlier on in the process. We're going to say less than 3. If we end up doing a start 2 and then we have to restart, we might increment that completed once or twice, but this ensures that we're at least early on in the phase before we pull the EPU safety pin. You could change that to 2 or to even 1 if you wanted to enforce that, but what it really does is, as we progress through, just turns this off from the voice recognition so that it's not accidentally going to fire later as we progress up through, as we get more step completions. So again, it's just kind of a nice way to walk you through the process, and a way I've found of preventing earlier comms from getting mixed up in the voice recognition with later commands. So I put that in there. So when we execute this, the Chief's going to give us a copy that we're okay to do this, and we're going to increment our completed. Okay, so he's going to give us a copy, but afterwards he's going to do a clear for run up, and it's going to be a little bit of a delay before that happens. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a delay. Okay, and when we do that, we've got our step variable. We're going to change this at this point to EPU. And we're going to need to pull the EPU pin. Currently that's done on the ATC menu. So we're going to pull up the menu and key 1. Okay, now just making it clear, this is going to be going away. We now have vJoy buttons to use for this. Instead of having to go through the menu system, we're going to be able to bind a virtual joystick button press to do this. But I haven't worked on that yet, and there's still some things forthcoming, so I'm just showing you the old way. But you could use, if you wanted to bind a vJoy button, just go up into the virtual joystick controllers, open up BMS Alt Launcher, and click a button. That'll bind that button press. You could pick button 1 or whichever one. We're going to organize, and there's going to be a system that I'm ready to implement that's going to be a lot nicer. But you bind that to the pull EPU pin command, for example, and then you just send that virtual joystick button press up, and you bypass the menus altogether. So that's the way of the future. But for right now, I'm showing you the way it's currently done. Okay, once we have that, then we're going to go ahead and get clear to check for flow. You could do check or verify. Clear to check for flow. And he's going to give us an output of no flow, but he probably won't respond immediately. Give our chief a little bit of time to verify that. And let's make a condition on this one right here. When we did our EPU run up here, we changed our step to EPU. We only want to check for flow when we're on the EPU step. So let's go ahead and add that in. So when our step equals EPU. That way we're not going to be checking for flow unless we're clearing on the EPU at the right time. Okay, and then since we've got the EPU, once the flow executes, then we do want to go ahead and reset that. So our completed, we're going to increment with another, and let's set our step. And our step is back to empty. We're not going to track it at this point, so we're reverted. Okay. Now what we want to do, we're on our default, so the EPU shouldn't be engaged and the flow shouldn't be engaged until we get on start 2. After which we get to post start, and our start 2 should disengage, and we're on to these. So reset game. Okay, so now we're reset and ready to go. Let's go ahead and give it a test. Chief, comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. How me?
Lima Charlie. Ready start 2. Chief, ready start 2.
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Chief, clear to pull EPU safety pin.
Copy. All clear for run up.
Clear to check flow.
No flow.
Okay, all pretty good. We moved forward and progressed through that. But I did notice on the ready start 2, I had to say chief on that. So let's go ahead and add ready. Okay. For our next step, after the flow, now we're going to get ready for the sec. So let's go ahead and add in another command here. And this is another ready or clear. For sec. And I have found that sometimes if you want some good spelling, separate each one. So you can do SEC instead of sec, and it'll recognize that really well. And then sometimes on these really short phrases, sometimes it'll hear set instead of sec. When you end in a consonant like that, it can be difficult for the voice recognition to pick up. So this you just learn by testing it and hearing what it sees, but I've found that sec is often confused for set, so I just go ahead and put that on there so it sees it. Sometimes you can use little tricks on the voice recognition like that. Okay, and then the first thing, when we clear for that, you're going to do some configurations in BMS, which is going to result in the nozzle closing, and when it closes, that's going to initiate some response from chief, and then you're going to get ready for sec. So the command that we're going to do first, he's going to let us know when he's ready for sec. And give him a little bit of pause there. And we're going to change our step when we do this to SEC. We're going to complete another step. Okay, so we've got that set up, but we also want to set up a test scenario so that if we're running this in our test, we can still do that. So what we want to do, let's go ahead and have our test scenario close our nozzle for us. And it's not capital. And yes, variables are case sensitive. Okay, now we have to do our BMS version number. Let's see, remember what that was. Want to make sure you get it right. Okay, so only if it's null, so we're good with that. Okay, so that's going to move our nozzle position so that that can be set. And then after he executes it, we have another move. Okay, and on that one, let's give it a little bit of a delay. And let's set our variable after the delay. Okay, so the nozzle position is going to be open. He's going to tell us he's ready for the sec, and then the position is going to close. So our test is going to open the nozzle position for us so that we can engage, and then it'll trip out when it's done. But our crew chief needs to respond to that. So let's go ahead and jump over to the key commands. So we have our good start. So the next one we're going to put in here, nozzle closed, clear for sec. And nope, we're going to do that when our step is equal to the SEC. And when our nozzle position is less than 0.05. Okay, and our chief is going to let us know that we're clear and ready for sec. Okay, and we're going to create a variable here, value for our step. We're going to increment it to nozzle open. With that one, and then we're going to create another command key as it moves to the nozzle open step. Oh, wrong add. It happens. And when our nozzle position is greater than 0.8. And we're going to get a command here telling us the nozzle is open. We're going to change our step when that happens to the next one, which is going to be the speed brakes. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to the speed brake open, just so that it's ready to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and head back to our configuration. Let's go back to our default. This should be disabled for there. And let's give it a test. Reset game.
Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Ready, start 2.
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Chief, pull EPU safety pin.
Copy. All clear for run up.
Clear to check for flow.
No flow.
Clear for sec.
Speed brake, flight controls clear. Ready for set. Nozzle closed. Clear for run up.
Okay, had a little bit of a timing issue right there. Let's go check one thing right here. Let's close that first. Reset game. Ready, start 2.
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Chief, pull EPU safety pin.
Copy. All clear for run up.
Clear to check for flow.
I'm sorry, sir. Say again.
Clear to check for flow.
No flow.
Clear for sec.
Nozzle closed. Clear for run up.
Okay. Now that we've got the clear for run up, our next step is sec check good. Okay, put a little variety in there too. We're going to do a copy for confirmation. And then there's some follow-up here. So we're going to let our test set our nozzle position, and it needs to open up. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, when our BMS is there, let's put this at the last and give us a little bit of a delay. Then there's going to be a speed brake check. Give it a little bit longer delay. Again, only when we're executing a test. And again, these are being set by us during testing so we can hear them, but all these tests, none of them will execute when you're doing it through the game with BMS. So. Okay, so then there needs to happen when we set our nozzle position, we open that up. Then when we open and close the speed brakes, that's going to be done over on our key configuration. So we've got the nozzle open. And we want to have a second condition on the sec OK. Since we've got the nozzle open, we get that report, but we get the same thing on another condition set.
Nozzle open.
Okay, so we want to do it at 2 times, one with the nozzle open setting and then another one when the sec is okay. So we're going to use the same command for either condition set so that we don't have to create a second one. Or you could do another nozzle open one if you want, but didn't need to, so that should allow for that. So, but we definitely need to do something for our speed brakes. And let's go ahead and set up a condition set for them. Okay, so once the brake's open, that's going to change our step to the speed brake closed. And the one thing I got to set here, let's make sure on the nozzle open. Yeah, and we've got our speed brake set. Okay. And we assign that with the speed brakes open. This just makes sure that the speed brakes can't be closed if they haven't been opened first. And so that this one's aware of this one by linking them with the step condition. So it just keeps things running smoothly. Okay, so now we've got our speed brakes closed. Let's go ahead and execute the speed brakes closed. And we're going to change our step to waiting for trim at this point. Okay, let's go back and test it out. Reset game.
Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
Okay, and just what's happening is our RPM is greater than 60. We're executing this. Our complete is getting reset, so this is automatically firing when that's happening. So it's just on the reset. You can wipe that out if you want. I probably will in a little while. But for now, let's just keep going. Chief, ready, start 2.
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
EPU off. Pull EPU safety pin.
Copy. All clear for run up.
Clear to check for flow.
No flow.
Clear for sec.
I apologize, sir. Say again.
Clear for sec.
Nozzle closed. Clear for run up.
Sec check good.
I'm sorry, sir. Say last.
Sec check good.
I apologize. Say last.
Chief, sec good.
Copy. Nozzle open. Speed brakes open. And closed.
Okay, so there I added the word sec at the kind of last minute, but didn't hit save. But I wanted to throw that on there, so okay. Anyway, so far making good progress. So I'm going to go ahead and jump through right now. We're going to use a full setup library. I'm not going to take you through the rest of the steps. You guys can probably figure that out. But if you have any questions, feel free to contact me on the forums or let me know. I'll let you know how to do something, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how to go through the process of setting up the chief interactions for the virtual crew chief. Okay, now that I've loaded up the regular library here, let's go ahead and give it a test for all of the integral pieces. But there's, before we do that, something that I need to talk about on the basic library, and that is getting the configuration set up for your controls. So one of the things that I mentioned on the README is you got to do some bindings here. One of them, the first, is the MPO switch. For the MPO switch, it's the O key by default. But if you're using something else, you want to change the binding on that switch and make it a different key or button, just in case. As far as the trim goes, the condition sets here are reading off of the variable trim. And when in test mode, the trims will automatically check themselves based on a timer by setting the variable nose down, nose up, left or right. But what doesn't work are the large movements. You're going to need to bind those to your joystick. BMS does not report the joystick positions back, and so we're not using BMS, but we're actually binding off of your controller for monitoring the big movements, nose down, nose up, rolls, etc. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, when you first get your library downloaded, you're going to want to go into those and bind your controls. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that on this WinWing controller that I'm using. So I just press down on the nose down a little bit, bringing in the y-axis, and the range I'm going to set here, I actually want to do 0 to 40. I don't go all the way to 50, just to make sure I'm pressing it far enough, kind of leave a little bit of a dead band in there. Okay, and then the nose up is going to be that same axis, but we're going to change the range, and he's going to be 60 to 100. And a roll left and a roll right. And for the yaw left and yaw right. Okay, that's one I think. Okay, and then for the brakes, in this case I'm using toe brakes, so go ahead and set those up. You would bind those to whatever you're using for the brakes as well. But you've got two. You've got a left brake movement and no movement. So to set up the movement, okay, so we start at 100, it looks like. It goes down to 0. So I'm going to go from 0, and let's put that at 90. Okay, that's working good. And at 100 was no movement, so I'm just going to say at 100, that was off the brake. Perfect. Same thing for the right brake. And no movement at 100. Okay, so once you've got your joystick and brakes and rudder hooked up on the library, you're ready to go. So let's switch back over. Once you're ready to go, you can go through the test. I'll show you what that's like right here. Okay, how's Chief doing today?
Well, sir, scooter over G'd 175 for the second time this week, so it's gonna be another long night. But other than that, I'm alright.
Okay, well, forgot to do the comms check.
Loud and clear, sir. How me?
Loud and clear. Okay, Chief, ready to start 2?
Clear forward and aft. Ready for start 2. Good start down here, sir. 6 green.
EPU off, ready to pull EPU safety pin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are cleared for run-up.
Cleared to check for flow.
I'm sorry, sir. Say again.
Cleared to check for flow.
No flow.
Clear for sec.
Nozzle closed. Clear for run-up.
Sec check good.
Yes, sir. Nozzle open. Speed brakes open. And closed.
Clear flight controls.
Speed brakes, flight controls clear.
Cleared for bit.
Clear bit.
Ready for trim.
Ready for trim.
Trim disconnected.
Copy. No movement.
Trim connected.
Copy. Nose up. Nose down. Roll left. Roll right. Yaw left. Yaw right.
Okay, Chief, clear for big movements.
Flight controls still clear. Nose down. Nose up. Roll left. Roll right. Yaw right. Yaw left.
DBU still clear.
I'm sorry, sir. Say again.
DBU still clear.
Flight controls still clear.
Ready on the left brake.
Yes, sir. Ready on left brake. No movement. 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 No movement.
Ready on the right brake.
I apologize, sir. Say last.
Ready on the right brake.
No movement. No movement. All right, ready on the right brake. Movement. No movement. Movement. No movement.
Ready to check the refuel door.
I'm sorry, sir. Say last.
Ready to check refuel door?
Copy. Stand by just a sec. Okay, ready for refuel door check. Door open. And closed.
Okay, Chief, all looks good. You're cleared off.
Roger that, sir. Have a safe flight. I'll see you when you get back.
Okay, so there we successfully went through the test, and all that's left then is hook up to BMS, reset the game, and go through it with the actual variables in place. So I hope you like this tutorial, and it gave you a few things to see visually how they integrate with respect to using variables, using conditions, using plugins, all the different features of FoxVox. I even talked a little bit about the vJoy commands, which honestly there's a lot more to come with that because there's some neat options that are coming further that are going to make integration with BMS even tighter and cleaner going forward. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, lots of little keys and tricks. One of the things I did on the brake movements, as you'll notice, is that there's a repeat set so that as you're pumping the brakes, every 2 seconds or so, the chief will repeat himself and you'll hear movement, movement, movement. And then if you stop and let off, you'll hear a no movement. So one of the little things that I did. But feel free to browse through the library and see how everything was configured. What's really cool about FoxVox and the virtual crew chief is that it's all done just through UI configurations. There's no scripting or programming that's required. Just add in and basically as I showed you going through the configuration and setup of this library, everything can be achieved through just simple config and setup. So you can do this with BMS, but FoxVox of course extends to other applications and games as well. So hope you like it. Happy flights and best for everyone. Thanks.